At the will reading, my dad, Robert Miller, looked me straight in the eye before sliding a leather folder across the table to my sister. Olivia gets $11 million. As for you, Sophia, go earn your own. My ears rang. The room tilted. Everyone's polite murmurs turned into a suffocating silence that pressed against my chest. I wanted to shout, but before I could, the family lawyer, James Carter, cleared his throat and lifted a sealed envelope. There's something from your grandfather, Henry Miller. Something he insisted must be read aloud only when Sophia was present. My mom, Karen, shifted uncomfortably. My sister smirked, twirling the diamond bracelet she'd flaunted since morning. And then James began to read the first line. The words struck like thunder. My mother's face drained of color, and she suddenly screamed, shattering whatever illusion of control the Millers thought they had. When the meeting finally broke apart, I drove straight to the ranch house where my grandparents had lived all their lives. The place looked smaller than I remembered, its paint peeling, the porch sagging under years of neglect. Yet the faint jingle of the wind chimes still echoed, the same sound that once meant safety, summer nights, and Henry's laughter drifting across the fields. Now it felt hollow, like a memory I wasn't supposed to touch. I hadn't been back in over a year, not because I wanted distance, but because I was told there was no one left to visit. So when the front door creaked open and Margaret Miller, my grandmother, appeared in the doorway, I froze. Her eyes were sharp, her arms crossed. "So, you finally decided to show up?" she said coldly. The words stung worse than any slap. My voice cracked. "Grandma, what's going on? I was told you were in a nursing home, that you and Grandpa—" She cut me off, raising a trembling hand. "Your grandfather called for you, Sophia. Over and over, on his deathbed. He asked for his little scientist. But you never came. You never answered." The air left my lungs. "That's not true," I whispered, stepping forward desperately. "Please, let me see the number he was calling." Margaret hesitated, then disappeared inside. Minutes felt like hours until she returned with a worn notepad. She shoved it into my hands. My chest tightened the moment I saw Henry's handwriting, familiar and steady. But the number scrawled across the page wasn't mine. Not even close. "This isn't my number," I gasped. "I've had the same phone since high school." Her brows furrowed. "Robert told us you changed it when you went to college. That you didn't want to be bothered. That you were ashamed of us." My knees buckled. I clutched the porch railing for support. "No, that's a lie. I came home last spring break. I came here. Olivia was standing right there on the porch. She told me no one was home." Margaret's face paled. "We were here. We've always been here." "Sophia, are you saying—" "They lied to me," I hissed, fury burning through my chest. "Dad, Mom, Olivia, they cut me off from you on purpose. They even told me you and Grandpa had been moved to a facility in Cedar Ridge, that visitors weren't allowed because of quarantine." Margaret stumbled back, her lips trembling. "They said, you didn't want us anymore. That you had a new life." A bitter laugh broke from me, sharp and shaky. "I never said that. They wanted me gone, and because of them I never got to say goodbye to Grandpa." Her knees weakened, and she collapsed into the porch swing, clutching her chest. "They told everyone, you didn't come to the funeral because you didn't care." Tears blurred my vision. I would never miss his funeral. Never. He was the only one who believed in me. The porch fell silent except for the rustling trees, whispering secrets neither of us wanted to hear. Margaret wiped her face with the corner of her sleeve. When she looked back at me, her expression had changed. The cold suspicion in her eyes was gone, replaced by something heavier regret mixed with fury. Without a word, she walked into the living room and reached for the old rotary phone hanging on the wall. Her fingers trembled slightly, but when she began to dial, her movements were deliberate, each click of the dial echoing like a drumbeat in my chest. "Who are you calling?" I asked, stepping closer. She didn't answer until the line clicked. "Robert, Karen, and Olivia. All of them. They're coming here tonight." Her voice cut like steel. I froze. "Grandma, are you sure?" "I'm sure," she said firmly. "It's time this family faced the truth. Your grandfather left instructions with his lawyer, James Carter. He'll be here too." The thought of seeing my parents and Olivia again made my stomach twist. I pictured Dad's cold eyes, Mom's fake smile, Olivia's smug little smirk when she waved that check at me earlier. Every nerve in my body screamed to run, but I couldn't. Not anymore. An hour later, Margaret insisted I wait in the kitchen when the first knock rattled the front door. "Stay there until I call you," she ordered, placing a gentle but firm hand on my shoulder. I obeyed, settling into the small wooden chair by the kitchen table, the same table where Grandpa used to sip coffee while I showed him science clippings from the newspaper. The memory stung, raw and fresh, but it gave me strength. From the other room, I heard voices filter in one by one. My mother's overly cheerful tone, sugar dripping from every syllable. "Oh, Mom, what a surprise invitation." My father's practiced politeness followed. "Helen, it's been too long." Then Olivia's sigh, loud and theatrical, like she was bored already. Finally, silence. The kind of silence that comes before lightning splits the sky. Then Margaret's voice, sharper than I'd ever heard it. "Please everyone, sit down. James Carter will be here shortly." I gripped the edge of the table, heart hammering. I could imagine the living room. Dad straightening his tie, Mom fussing with her bracelet, Olivia tapping her nails against the armrest. All waiting, all so sure they were in control. But they weren't. Not this time. The doorbell rang again, and I heard Margaret greet him. "James, thank you for coming." The deep baritone of the lawyer carried through the walls. "Of course, Mrs. Miller. I believe Henry wanted certain matters addressed, in front of the entire family." A chair scraped, followed by the sound of papers being shuffled. My pulse quickened. This was it. Whatever secret Grandpa had held back all those years was about to explode right in the middle of the people who had stolen everything from me. I closed my eyes, whispering under my breath, "Don't let me break, Grandpa, please." I heard the sound of a briefcase snapping open, the rustle of thick paper being drawn out. Margaret's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Now that everyone is here, we can begin." My pulse thundered in my ears. I stepped out of the kitchen when she called my name. The room fell silent as all eyes locked on me. Dad's face went pale. "Sophia, what are you doing here?" Mom's fake smile faltered. We thought." Olivia's lips parted in disbelief. "You weren't supposed to be here." I held their stares, refusing to shrink back. Margaret motioned to the couch. "Sit." The lawyer, James Carter, adjusted his glasses and began reading from the will. His voice was calm, deliberate, every word deliberate enough to slice through stone. "To my beloved wife, Margaret Miller, I leave our family home and a financial provision for her care." Grandma nodded silently. No one else dared to move. "To my granddaughter, Sophia Miller, I leave the newly constructed research facility at Pine Ridge, including all laboratory equipment, intellectual property rights to any projects under my sponsorship, and full funding for its continued development." The air in the room cracked like glass under pressure. My father inhaled sharply. My mother's eyes twitched. Olivia shot up from her chair so fast it screeched against the wooden floor. "You've got to be kidding me!" she shouted. "The whole facility? The lab? That's supposed to be mine." James ignored her, continuing in the same steady tone. "The remainder of my estate, including accounts and investments, shall be divided equally between my two granddaughters, Sophia and Olivia Miller." The silence that followed was deafening. Olivia's face turned crimson. No, this is insane." "Dad, Mom, you promised me everything. You said if I played the perfect granddaughter, if I visited him, smiled at him, he'd leave it all to me." Her voice cracked, raw with fury. My stomach turned. So it had all been an act. Every fake smile, every rehearsed word by her bedside, it was all to win a fortune. Dad raised his hands, trying to calm her. "Olivia, lower your voice." But she wasn't listening. She jabbed a finger at me. "Why her? She wasn't even around. She didn't care. She abandoned him." I felt my jaw clench, words boiling inside me. But for now, I stayed quiet. Let her scream. Let her reveal herself. Grandma's voice finally sliced through. "There's more," she said coldly, pulling out a folded letter from the drawer beside her. "Henry left this for Sophia, to be read aloud." Olivia's eyes widened. Dad stiffened. Mom's hands trembled in her lap. James carefully unfolded the letter, the yellowed paper crackling under his touch. My heart pounded as he began. To my dearest Sophia. James's voice softened as he unfolded the fragile paper. The room leaned forward, straining to catch each word. To my dearest Sophia, he began. If this letter is being read, then I am gone from this world. But I hope these words remind you that you were never invisible to me. My throat tightened instantly. You were always different, James read on. Not in a way that needed fixing, but in a way that made life richer. While others chased noise, you searched for truth. While they performed, you observed. You were my little scientist, my pride, my legacy. Tears blurred my vision. My mother shifted in her seat, arms crossed like a shield. My father's jaw flexed. Olivia rolled her eyes but said nothing. I remembered being 7, clutching a notebook on the porch, timing how long it took rainwater to fill a glass jar. Grandpa Henry had crouched beside me, smiling as if my experiment mattered more than anything in the world. James's voice pressed on. I watched you grow up with questions no one else wanted to answer. I saw how your joy dimmed every time your mother brushed you off, every time your father changed the subject. I saw how they poured all their attention into Olivia, while you built your own path in silence. Grandma Margaret's hand reached for mine. I gripped it tightly. I don't blame your sister entirely, James continued, reading Henry's words. She played the part they gave her. But you, Sophia, you wrote your own script. That courage made me proud beyond words. A sob tore out of me before I could stop it. I remembered the night I'd won the regional science fair, standing with a trophy in my hands, unsure whether to be proud or ashamed. My parents hadn't shown up. They'd been at Olivia's rehearsal instead. I asked Grandpa if we could hide the trophy under my bed so my parents wouldn't look at me like I was a stranger, and he'd nodded, his eyes heavy with sorrow. James's voice grew quieter. You deserved recognition, warmth, a space to be exactly who you are. I can't rewrite the past, but I can build your future. That is why I left you the lab. Because you are not a mistake. You are the miracle our family never understood. The words hit me like thunder rolling across the plains. My chest heaved as I fought back sobs. Across the room, Olivia's face hardened, crimson with envy. My mother looked away, her lips pressed tight. My father's hands clenched into fists, knuckles white. I whispered to myself, almost too softly to hear. He saw me. He always saw me. The letter trembled in James's hand as he folded it shut. The silence that followed was unbearable, thick with all the years of lies and neglect suddenly dragged into the light. Grandma finally spoke, her voice steady as stone. Now the truth is out. What happens next is up to all of you. The letter barely left James Carter's hands when Olivia exploded. This is ridiculous, she screamed, shooting up from her chair. Her fists slammed against the table so hard a water glass toppled and shattered on the floor. Why should she get anything? She wasn't even here when Grandpa was sick. I was the one visiting him, smiling, listening, playing the perfect granddaughter. And this is how he repays me? My chest burned. I rose slowly, my chair scraping the wooden floor. The perfect granddaughter? I said quietly, but my voice carried like a whip. You mean the actress? You never cared about him, you cared about the payday. Her head snapped toward me, eyes blazing. Shut up, you don't know anything. I know plenty, I shot back, my voice trembling but fierce. You lied to me. You told me no one was home when I came to visit. You stood on that porch and looked me in the eye, and you shut me out. Grandpa thought I abandoned him because of you. For a second, Olivia faltered, her lips twitching. Then she pointed at me like I was poison. You're lying. You're just trying to steal what's mine. I laughed bitterly. Steal? No, Olivia. It was never yours to begin with. Enough! My mother's voice cracked like a whip. She stood abruptly, her hands trembling but her tone sharp. Sophia, stop lecturing your sister. You don't understand the pressure she's been under. You don't know the sacrifices she made. My hands curled into fists. Sacrifices? I barked out a hollow laugh. Like what? Pretending to care? Smiling on command? You call that sacrifice? Try growing up invisible in your own home. Dad finally stood, adjusting his shirt collar like he was preparing for a boardroom negotiation. His voice was smooth, calculated. Sophia, let's be reasonable. You've already had your education paid for. The science camps, the competitions, the travel, you know how much that cost us? Isn't that enough? My blood boiled. Enough? My voice cracked, and tears burned in my eyes. You didn't pay for any of it. Grandpa and Grandma did. Every camp, every trip, every piece of equipment, I saw the checks. It was them, not you. Dad's face tightened, but I pressed on, louder now, my words tumbling like fire. You didn't support me, you tolerated me. And you only tolerated me because Grandpa believed in me when you didn't. Don't you dare stand there and pretend you gave me anything. The room vibrated with tension. Olivia's breathing was ragged, her fists clenched. Mom's eyes darted between us, desperate to hold her crumbling mask. Dad's calm facade fractured, his lips twitching. Family means sacrifice, Mom snapped, finally. And if you want to honor your grandfather's memory, you'll sign over your share. Olivia needs this more than you do. Her words cut through me like a blade. My chest heaved, but I refused to cry. Instead, I straightened my shoulders, feeling Grandpa's presence behind me, his words echoing. You are not a mistake. You are a miracle. I will not sign over anything, I said firmly, my voice low but steady. This isn't about money. This is about truth. Grandpa trusted me. He built the lab for me, and I won't let you twist his legacy into your transaction. Olivia let out a bitter laugh, her voice cracking under the weight of her rage. Transaction? You think you're better than me? You've always thought you were better. That's why nobody wanted you around. That's why you don't belong here. I stared at her, at all of them, the family that had twisted love into power, that had built a wall between me and the only man who ever believed in me. My heart pounded, but for the first time in years I wasn't afraid. You're right, I whispered. I don't belong here. Not with people who traded love for greed. The words hung in the air, heavier than the silence that followed. The silence after my words was suffocating, thick enough to choke on. Olivia's chest rose and fell in sharp bursts, her nails digging crescent moons into her palms. My father stared at me like I was an enemy across a battlefield. My mother's lips trembled, but her eyes blazed with resentment. And then Grandma Margaret rose from her chair, slowly, deliberately, her frail hands gripping the armrest for balance. She looked smaller than she once had, but her voice when it came was thunder. How dare you, she said, each syllable like a strike of lightning. How dare you stand in this house that Henry built and speak of sacrifice? Robert blinked. Mother, please. No. Margaret's hand slammed against the wooden table. The sound cracked through the air. Do not mother me, Robert. You deceived your father. You lied to him while he was dying. You told him Sophia wanted nothing to do with him. You stole her from his last days. Karen stood quickly, voice trembling with feigned dignity. We did what we thought was best. She was always difficult. She needed distance, and Henry— Don't you dare use his name as a shield, Margaret snapped, her eyes like steel. You poisoned his heart with lies. And you— she turned toward Olivia. You played along. You wore your smiles, you said your lines, you begged a dying man for his favor. That was not love, that was a transaction. Olivia's face twisted, but words failed her. You all should be ashamed, Margaret continued, her voice cutting through every excuse, every mask. Ashamed that the only one who honored Henry's love was the very girl you tried to erase. My chest tightened, tears welling in my eyes. I gripped the edge of my chair, afraid if I let go I would collapse under the weight of it all. Robert's composure cracked. His voice sharpened, desperate. We are family, Mother. Family means forgiveness. You can't just erase us from this house. Margaret leaned forward, her frail frame trembling, but her voice unwavering. You erased yourselves the moment you betrayed Henry, the moment you betrayed Sophia. You don't get to speak of family. Not anymore. Karen's eyes widened, panic flashing. Helen, Margaret, she corrected coldly. You lost the right to call me anything else. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Margaret straightened, her voice calm but deadly. Leave, all of you. You are not welcome here. The room froze. Robert scoffed, trying to gather dignity. This is absurd. We'll contest the will. You'll do nothing. Margaret interrupted, her tone final. Henry's words are clear, his lawyer is present, and his legacy is protected. But you will walk out of this house right now. The air snapped like a breaking bone. Olivia stormed toward the door first, her heels clacking like gunshots against the wooden floor. She flung the door open, muttering curses under her breath. Karen followed, her mask finally slipping into pure fury. You'll regret this, she spat, though her voice shook. Robert lingered a moment longer, his eyes narrowing at me. You think this is over? He hissed. I met his glare with steady defiance. It already is. And with that, he turned sharply, his footsteps heavy as he marched out the door. The door slammed shut behind them, rattling the old frame. Their car doors slammed, the engine roared, tires crunched against gravel. Then, silence. Not the sharp, suffocating silence from before. A new silence, lighter, freer, like a storm had finally passed. I exhaled shakily, my knees nearly buckling. Margaret placed a hand on my shoulder, her touch gentle yet firm. They're gone, she whispered. For good. I nodded, tears streaming down my face, but for the first time in years, they weren't tears of weakness. They were release. 6 years. That's how long it had been since the sound of slamming car doors faded into the distance, carrying my parents and Olivia out of my life. 6 years since Margaret and I sat in the quiet ranch house, clinging to each other like survivors of a storm. Now, the storm was only a memory. In its place stood the Henry Miller Innovation Center, the lab Grandpa had left me, expanded into something far beyond what even he might have imagined. 5 buildings rose against the Texas skyline, glass walls gleaming in the sun, greenhouses stretching into the horizon, fields of experimental crops glowing with possibility. I walked through the lobby every morning, past the portrait of Grandpa Henry smiling beneath a sunflower field. The plaque beneath it read, "For the dreamers who invest in those, the world overlooks." I touched it each day like a prayer. Inside, the hum of machinery, the scent of earth from greenhouse soil, the chatter of researchers, it was the sound of legacy becoming reality. 27 scientists worked under our roof, tackling everything from drought-resistant crops to eco-friendly irrigation. My closest friends from university, Tara Johnson and Micah Lee, now led their own departments. Sometimes, we still laughed over burned popcorn in the break room, but other times we stood together in awe, watching farmers from struggling communities take home solutions that changed their lives. Last spring, we launched the Little Scientist Initiative, a summer camp for rural kids who reminded me too much of myself. Shy, overlooked, burning with questions no one around them bothered to answer. 15 children came that first year. One of them, a quiet 13-year-old girl with thick glasses, handed me a notebook filled with observations about bee populations in her hometown. Her calculations were messy, but her eyes shone with the same spark Grandpa once saw in mine. When I told her she was brilliant, she whispered, "You actually read it?" I had to turn away to hide my tears. It was during the second summer of the program that Olivia returned. I still remember the way she walked into the lobby hesitant, stripped of her old armor of diamonds and arrogance, her hair pulled back simply, no glittering jewelry, no smug smile, just uncertainty. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said quietly, staring at Grandpa's portrait. "I just wanted to see what he built for you, what you've built with it." For a moment, I couldn't speak. The memory of her lies, her laughter when I was shut out, the cruel words she spat at me, it all pressed down on my chest. But then I remembered Grandpa's letter. She played the part they gave her. So I gave her the tour. She walked through the labs with wide eyes, asked questions she never would have cared about before, paused at the community garden where local families harvested their own food. "He always knew who you were," she said at last, her voice cracking. "Even when I didn't. Even when I pretended not to. We didn't reconcile with hugs or tears. The wounds were too deep for that. But twice a year, Olivia came back to volunteer at the camp. She taught the kids how to present their ideas clearly, how to speak with confidence, skills she had mastered in her old life of performance. It was a small bridge, but it was something. As for Robert and Karen, they disappeared into a parallel world. Last I heard, they'd moved to Florida, Dad retired early from his firm, Mom posing at charity galas with practiced smiles. Their names appeared in business journals and social columns, but never in my inbox, never at my door. And that was fine, because I no longer needed them. The only family I had left was the one that mattered. Margaret, who now lived in a small apartment attached to my home, close enough for me to bring her coffee each morning, and the family I built here, scientists, dreamers, children with notebooks in hand. For the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. I was exactly where I was meant to be. It was late autumn when Margaret called me into her room. She was 87 now, her body slower, but her eyes still sharp, still carrying the same fire that had silenced an entire family 6 years ago. "Sophia," she said softly, pulling a small velvet pouch from her cardigan pocket. "This belongs to you." I frowned, taking it carefully. Inside lay a silver pocket watch, its surface worn smooth by decades of use. The initials HM were faintly engraved on the back. I opened it and froze. Tucked inside the lid was a tiny photograph of me at my first science fair, beaming beside my project on honeybee communication. Grandpa Henry's handwriting curved across the edge of the photo. "My little scientist will change the world someday." End of priest. The tears came fast, hot, unstoppable. "He carried this? Every day?" I whispered. Margaret nodded, her hand covering mine. "Every single day." I placed the watch against my chest, as if I could feel his heartbeat through the silver. The years of neglect, the betrayals, the screaming voices at that cursed will reading, they all fell away. What remained was his faith, etched into metal, immortal in words. That night, I walked out to the old bench behind the ranch house. The fields stretched dark and endless under the stars. I held the pocket watch up to the sky, the moonlight glinting off its surface, and spoke aloud, though no one could hear me. "You were right, Grandpa. They tried to make me smaller. But I grew anyway, and now I will make sure no child ever feels invisible again." The wind rustled through the trees like a quiet answer. For the first time in my life, I felt whole. Not because of the inheritance, not because of the lab, but because I finally understood. Legacy isn't measured in money or titles, it's measured in belief. And Henry Miller had believed in me enough to change everything. I closed the watch gently, tucking it into my pocket, and whispered, "I'll carry you with me too."